This video will show how to apply wet and wet, wet and dry, dry and dry, and a wash to a painting of fruit. The first step is to lay down your water. I'm going to paint the mango first, so I'm starting with a larger round brush. I left an area dry so that paint does not flow in that area. You want to use at least 5 colors in every object. Use darker colors in darker areas and lighter colors in lighter areas. I'm starting by dropping in blues and purples in the darker areas. The mango is mainly green and red, but I'm adding oranges and yellows for brightness. Where the green and red mix together, it will create a darker color because they're complementary colors. Then I mix the paint together by moving around the board. When I'm happy with it, I want to stop. And also blot out some of the whites. Next, I'm going to paint this small pepper. Deciding what areas to leave white and not covering those areas with water, then laying water everywhere else. And I'm using a smaller brush because this is a smaller area to cover. Looking for what colors I see and what values I see. So I'm using purples and oranges because those are good dark colors to put into a yellow vegetable. Brought in some reds. And then of course yellow because there's a lot of yellow in here. When I have all the colors in, I move it around. That's how I mix it. I'm doing the bean, so I'm laying down my water, greens, yellows, blues, oranges, and I have a little bit of dark green and I'm moving it. Now with the banana, covering it. Laying in some yellow, a little bit of green, a little bit of purple, a little bit of orange, and then moving it. This is how you mix. I'm going to blot out a little bit with my paper towel to bring in some lightness. I'm adding a little bit of just wet and dry onto this piece of garlic because I'm going to then come in and do some just dry and dry over top of that. You can mix as much or as little as you want. You can always blot areas out to bring back in your whites. Doing a little bit more dry and dry onto this piece of garlic. So that is a dry brush. I'm doing the same thing on this pepper. Now I'm going to add in some details in other areas. Make sure that wherever you go in and you add detail, that the first coat is completely dry. If it is not, you should blow dry it. I'm looking around to see where details need to fall. And use a little dry on dry and into the banana to give it a little bit of texture. Now that I have a lot of the details, I'm going to start adding in my shadows. And I'm doing this with a wet on wet technique. And it's important that your shadows all cast the same direction. So think about where your light source is. Make sure that they are all falling in the same direction. Now for the background wash, I'm mixing up a bunch of different colors that I want to use in the background. Now I'm going to cover the entire background with water. Notice that I am using a flat brush. This is a wash brush. If I was doing a really large painting, I would be using a really large wash brush. Since this is a smaller painting, this brush is fine. It's really important that I make sure that I'm careful going around all the objects and make sure that water is everywhere. You want to work quickly while doing this so that your water doesn't dry before you're finished and before you start adding in the wash that you've mixed up. Make sure that you've mixed up enough wash to cover the entire area. So I'm using kind of a blue that I've mixed up at the top. There's still a lot of water in that blue, so it's pretty light. If you want your background to be more saturated, you'll just mix up more paint pigment in your initial wash that you mixed. You can mix it as much or as little as you want. You can add in a little bit of other color if need be. Move it as much as you'd like.